we need to learn to talk to the business people about what's important to them, what they're trying to achieve, get them on our side. And then instead of, again, being the guy who stops everything, you get to be the guy they turn to help them achieve their goals, help them make their bonus. You want to make somebody a buddy? Help them make their bonus for the year.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative and Google Chrome Enterprise is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the #1 best-selling CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as from other top CISOs and cybersecurity thought leaders. Listen to previous CISO Stories episodes at securityweekly.com/CSP. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I am your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Wes Knight, CISO and Director in the Government Sector.
Todd, I kind of backed into it. My background, I worked with IBM for a lot of years, and then I left IBM and started my own company. And I was doing consulting and training, and it was a lot of network stuff and servers and things like that. And started having my network clients ask me about security things, and so I slid into network security, firewalls and those types of things. And seems like once I started sliding that way, I just kept sliding, and woke up one day and I was up to my eyeballs in information security stuff, and didn't. Honestly, once I got into it, I loved it, but I really did just accidentally end up in it, and was like, "Oh, I found my home now. This is a great place to work."
Mm-hmm. So many people I find in this field that didn't choose it as a field because it wasn't such a defined field a long time ago, and kind of ended up here, and then we're happy once they were here, and then stayed with it.
Yeah, I started in IT in '79, and there wasn't anything called information security back then. So I was a technical guy. Again, I was an engineer. I actually started out repairing computers for IBM, and then as networks became a thing, because originally there weren't networks. As that became a thing, I got very interested in that, and again, just made that progression into information security.
It's interesting. Right around that time, I had applied for a job at IBM, and I was one of the fortunate people to get a second interview, and everybody was amazed at my college, because the college I went to at the time, which was the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, was one of only two schools in the state that and the University of Wisconsin-Madison that had a computer science program. And so I was in a dorm with all these computer science grads that were trying to get into IBM, and they weren't getting interviews. And here I was, a business administration major, and I was going for my second interview with IBM, but it was a different kind of a job. It was actually as a production control supervisor on the shop floor, building System 38s, I think it was.
Yep.
So totally different kind of thing, but I didn't get the job, and so that was probably a good thing, because that
worked out for you.
It worked out for me. So today we're going to talk about effective communication as being critical to CISO success. And so tell us a little bit about that. What's your perspective on that?
Well, Todd, as we were just discussing, I started out as a technical person. And so when I got to be a CISO, I was what I call a tactical CISO. I knew how to do every job that the people worked for me did. And I trained most of them on how to do it. What I didn't realize as I trained them to do it was that I needed to let them do it. I was kind of, I wouldn't call myself a micromanager, but I was doing that. I was redoing their work and making sure they did it just the way I wanted to do it. And I actually had a lady that worked for me who came in my office one day, and it was really funny in hindsight because she was embarrassed. She didn't know what to say. She was looking at her feet, and she finally said, I said, so what's going on? What's the matter? She said, well, I need to tell you something. I said, okay, what? She said, after a moment of staring at her feet, she said, you really suck at delegation. And I thought for a minute, and I said, why do you say that? And then she looked at me like I was crazy, and she said, because you suck at delegation. And I thanked her, and she left, and I kind of sat there and thought about it, and I realized she was right. I wasn't delegating, I was controlling. And when I made myself let my people do their job, I found I had more time on my hands, and I moved into what I refer to as strategic CISO. And I started spending a lot of time with the business unit and found out that those guys talked a totally different language than I talked. And in order for me to be successful with them, I had to learn to talk to them like I was a business person. I had to learn their language. I had to learn what was important to them. Obviously, the bottom line is making money for the business unit. That's what they want to be able to do. And you know how they view CISOs, kind of like they do a CIO. You're the guy who stops everything from happening. And so I learned, I made myself learn how to communicate with them, and to position myself as the guy, instead of being the guy who said no, the guy who enabled them to achieve their goals securely. But it's a very different language. It's a different communication style. Most technical people don't communicate well, including CISOs. I think the CIOs they've been doing it a little longer than we have in some respects, and so some of the CIOs have already learned this and they've gotten better at it. But a lot of our CISOs, we still have a lot to learn with that. We're used to talking to technical people, talking bits and bytes and things, and we need to learn to talk to the business people about what's important to them, what they're trying to achieve, get them on our side. And then instead of, again, being the guy who stops everything, you get to be the guy they turn to help them achieve their goals, help them make their bonus. You want to make somebody a buddy? Help them make their bonus for the year, those types of things.
It's interesting that you mentioned a delegation, because I think that's a skill that all of us, as we're, having our first management jobs, that we learn very quickly. And some of that, I think, comes from the pressure from the top to, we talked about those leaders that we're reporting to want to ask you want to be able to answer every question. And so we tend to control things because we want to answer, we want to have the answers. We don't want to be caught flat-footed. And
nobody likes surprises.
And I remember being, once I had a team. I was responsible for project management, the DBAs and one other department. I remember I had those three department heads that reported to me in a meeting, and every Wednesday we would go over the status. And they did a very similar thing to me. I think they had decided outside of the room that they were going to come at me in this next meeting, because I also had them prepare a weekly detailed status report. And they said, what's the point of us spending all this time creating this status report for you when we talk about the same stuff every week in our meeting? This is just creating a lot of work for us. And that was my light bulb moment. Like, oh my God, these people know what they're doing. I should just let them do. And it's such a hard thing to learn when you get to that point.
Well, I think a lot of us in information security kind of tend to be a little OCD anyway, and we want it done just like this. And that's okay, but you have to learn. You hire good people first off. You gotta take that step. You hire good people. You make sure they're trained, and you let them do their work. You just got to trust them to do their work, and not want to redo it back in your image. When they turn the report over to you, you have to just take it. I do want to know what's going on. I don't want the CIO or the CEO coming to me and asking me a question and me looking like a deer in the headlight. Nobody likes that kind of a thing. But knowing about it doesn't mean I have to be in absolute control of what they're doing.
Sure. So you started to talk about, with the executives and, how to talk the business, the language of the business. How do we do that if we've come up through the ranks as this technical CISO?
Well, a couple of ways. Number one, I mentor and coach a lot of folks who are executives or want to be executives. But I always tell them, I said, go to your CFO, for instance, and ask him to go to lunch. And don't talk about work, or at least not information security. If he wants to talk about his work, let him do it. But go to the guy's office. Yeah. When you go into somebody's office, you're always looking for a connection, a bridge, something that you have a similar interest in. You're looking for pictures of kids. I told somebody yesterday, I was talking to them, but I said, but the one thing you never do is say, "Hey, that's a cute kid. Is that your grandkid?" That's the wrong way to ask that question.
It may not be their grandkid, right?
Yeah. My youngest son was born when I was 42, and so people would oftentimes see my oldest daughter and my youngest son and me and my wife and think we were the grandparents. And that didn't bother me as much as it bothered my wife, but that was just not the kind of thing to say around her. But, you learn to ask questions like, well, that's really a cute kid. Who is that? But most folks, if you ask them a question about their family, they're perfectly willing to open up to you. Or if they have a picture of a pet, that's a winner. Anybody that's got a picture of a pet in their office, boy, they're going to talk about the pet if you give them an opportunity. And if you can get them talking, then you just get to listen. You don't have to carry the conversation. And a lot of folks who aren't used to that kind of communication have trouble starting a conversation, which the picture or whatever bridge that you find helps you with that. But then the other person will do a lot of the talking and you can listen, which is another skill most of us don't have. We are busy coming up with the next thing we want to say, and we don't listen to what that person is saying. So, listening, focusing on what they're saying. It's really good if you can say things, not ask them a lot of detailed questions necessarily, but, if they're saying something about their kid playing ball, asking them a question that lets them know you're tracking with them. Really, what they position, or, my daughter's in the band. Oh, great. What instruments you play? Just something that lets them know you're tracking with them. If you can build the start of a friendship with them, it's a lot easier on everybody. You don't want to go in the CFO's office and ask for a budget hike or increase, and they look at you and don't even know who you are. So you don't wait till the house is on fire before you buy the insurance, and you can't wait till you've got a crisis before you start trying to build relationships. So building relationships and being able to communicate effectively are critical. And honestly, in the technical field, those soft skills, we've ignored them for a lot of years. We've made our bread and butter off the ones and the zeros, and not off the vocabulary.
I know I've said it before on this podcast, but I'm a huge fan of all the Myers-Briggs, the DISC profiles, the Enneagrams, all the leadership books, and it's really about getting to understand people. So I really like your point about, looking in the office and seeing what things are. In fact, that's one of the big tips in the, I think it's called speed reading people. is the name of the book that I have, and it's looking for those clues for, you can sort of estimate what a person's Myers-Briggs type is by looking at their office and looking at those different things. And the listening is that you brought up is so important. When I was researching for the CISO Compass book, and I put this in one of the chapters on the soft skills, that I ran across 12 different ways to active listen, and things, and 12 different ways that people listen to each other, and some of those same things about trying to figure out what you're going to say next, or people may have hidden agendas that they're not really communicating across, which we have to be able to understand those things. So what sort of things, like in the daily workplace, would you say would help people to communicate better across the organization, not just with the senior executives?
Well, when we communicate, and this is true in the office or out of the office, but I talk about we communicate up, down, and sideways. We'll communicate up to executives, to our boss, that kind of thing. We report down to the folks who report to us. And then we kind of go sideways. So we talk to peers, we talk to neighbors, we talk to friends outside of work. So you're talking in the different directions, and how you communicate doesn't really change a whole lot based upon which direction you're talking, but you have to understand who you're talking to. And you were talking about agendas a minute ago. In business, when you're talking up to somebody, a lot of times you're trying to help them accomplish their agenda, whatever they're trying to do. The folks who report to you, you're trying to make sure they understand the goals and the missions they need to accomplish. But just learning how to have a conversation. I challenge the folks that I mentor. I'll say, look, this week, before we get back to the next week, I want you to just start a conversation with somebody you don't know. Go down to the break room, see somebody you don't know, and just start a conversation with them. And that's, if you've gotten in the habit of kind of looking for these clues, that's not that hard to do, even for somebody who's kind of an introvert. You can kind of step out of that a little bit if you can see some kind of connection. One of the ladies that I have mentored over the years, the first time I told her to do that, and she came back the next week and said that it worked. She said, I just started talking to this guy and it was great. She said, but the one thing you didn't tell me was how to end the conversation. I'm like, okay, well, I grew up in a household where my mother would stand up and say, thanks for coming by. She was just done with you. I never really thought about that piece of it, but I said, that's look at your watch and say, man, I've really enjoyed talking to you, but I gotta catch a call. Whatever. It's not that hard to walk away. But she was really kind of flabbergasted. She didn't really know how to end the conversation, but she started it well and carried it well. And then she got a little messed up at the end, but it worked out well for her. But I want people to do that at work. Again, folks you don't know, they don't have to be. They don't have to be your boss. They don't have to be the CEO. Just another person that works at your office, and just go talk to them and get easy doing that. It's a skill, and you practice your skills.
And I really like that, because and it's not like we're taking up a lot of extra time either, because I don't know where I read this once, or if it's the name of a book, or where this reference comes from, but it was never eat lunch alone. And the idea being, so many people, especially technical people, I see that a lot. They just kind of want to disconnect, get away. And I get that. Sometimes you need to do that. But then it becomes a habit where you're just eating at your desk, or you're doing email while you're on there, when actually more productive time could probably be spent by searching out somebody in the company. And maybe that person you're having lunch with may not be the senior executive in an organization, but maybe it's somebody that senior executive really looks to for advice, and you just don't know those connections you're going to make on your lunchtime.
Absolutely. I also had fallen into that. I used to eat lunch in my office by myself, and I'm a voracious reader, so I would read, or maybe I'd have to do email or something. But I started having our team meetings on. You mentioned Wednesdays. I used to have my team meetings on Wednesday mornings, and we'd all get in the conference room and we'd go around the table. What's everybody working on? Who's got problems? What do you need from me? Or what do you need from the rest of the team? Whatever. And we'd hash all that out. And then we'd all go to lunch together. And we did that once a week. We'd all go out to lunch together, and we did not talk about work at lunch. We got all the work out of the way in the meeting, and we just talked about the family, the kids, the dog, or, baseball or whatever at lunch, and just got to know each other better as people. And it helped us in our problem solving, I think, as we got to know each other better and trusted each other better. People were not afraid to say an idea, because you don't want to get shot down and put down. And as a manager, I never wanted anybody to get shot down. Maybe it wasn't a good idea, right? But that could still lead somewhere. So we always tried to encourage people to talk about their ideas. And I had a really diverse group that worked for me. And it was really funny because I felt like, because all of us were so different in our backgrounds and, where we came from, how we view things, that when we were looking at a problem, Todd, we got a very holistic view of the problem. And they would think of ideas for resolving the problems I would have never thought of, with my background. And so, people talk about diversity a lot, and, I'm in favor of diversity, but not just for diversity's sake. I think it makes the team function better. And again, you get used to talking to people with different backgrounds in your team. And then when you run into somebody in the break room that's not from, your neck of the woods, we say that here in the South, it's easier to have that conversation.
Yeah. And it's funny. Sometimes I think we think we're good enough in certain skills, and then we find out we're not as good as we think we are. I mean, I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of presentations, and so I've been putting PowerPoints and stuff together for years. But I know when it comes to marketing, and having worked with some marketing departments, and I'll put an idea or some graphics together. And then you ask the marketing people, well, we'll take a look at that stuff and shape it. And it's like, it comes back, it's like, wow, now I see why you're in marketing and I'm not. And so I think we have to appreciate those skills that other people have and bring those into the fold.
Yeah, I agree completely. We all can get better. If Vince Lombardi, when they would bring in the players every year, he started off with saying, hold up the football. These are pro players. This is the top of the top kind of a thing. But he'd hold up the football and say, gentlemen, this is a football. Just start with the basics, and you practice and you get better. And if you assume you're the smartest person in the room, or you assume you're the most highly skilled person in the room, you're probably going to be disappointed, because there's almost always somebody better or smarter than you hanging around somewhere. And I always, I do a lot of talking like you. I do public speaking, I do coaching, I do mentoring. But I really try to listen as much as I can, because if I'm talking, I may be helping you or whoever I'm talking to, but I'm not learning from that engagement. And I want to learn. I want to get better at what I do. Thing I do is Wednesday nights. I think it's this week, actually. One Wednesday night a month, I have what I call a campfire call, which is a Zoom call, and we'll have sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 people, and sometimes 10 or 15. But I call them a campfire because in a fireside chat, that's like this: me and you are talking, and everybody else listens. In a campfire, I want everybody to talk and everybody to contribute, some more than others based upon what the topic is. Topics vary all over the place, just depends on what's going on. But I really try to get everybody to participate actively in that and contribute to the overall conversation. We all learn that way.
I love the Vince Lombardi reference, being I'm a lifelong Green Bay Packer fan, so it's music to my ears. But I worked for a company where I thought this was ingenious. It wasn't my idea, but where they came up with, they had every couple of weeks would have what they call a rabbit hole meeting. And anybody could come, and it's where you go down the rabbit hole. It's where somebody brings up a topic that they want to discuss ad nauseum. You know how in some meetings you just end up down the rabbit hole. Well, that's what this meeting was about. And it was amazing the richness that you got out of that, because everybody was contributing the pros and the cons and getting into this debate. And so I think we just don't do those kinds of meetings enough.
I may steal that term. Every once in a while, and it happens to be this month, we have what I just call an open mic, and it's like we don't have a topic. We're just going to get together and see what's going on. And I like that rabbit hole thing, because I know exactly what that feels like to all of a sudden, I'm way down the bottom of the hole.
And that's okay. The nice thing about it is, going into the meeting, it's okay if we end up there. So
that's right. I'm going to steal that term. So.
You bet. Yeah. Well, I have to give credit to Kevin Novak. He's the one who came up with the term. So, but this has been great, Wes. I could talk about this for quite some time, because I think it's such an important issue today. What final advice would you give to emerging CISOs, new CISOs, current CISOs, or experienced CISOs as they're trying to enhance their own communication styles?
I really strongly suggest that they get a mentor if they can, but at least somebody they can trust who will hold them accountable for the goals they set. For instance, I want to be a better communicator. Okay, so somebody I work with that I trust, I'm going to ask them to hold me accountable for that. Like if you see me violate the rules I'm trying to opt under, maybe one of my people was talking to me and I just talked right over the top of them, kind of a thing. Call me on it. Not necessarily in front of the guy working for me, but, take me to the side and call me on it. You don't have somebody that's going to hold you accountable. It's hard to stay focused on your goals. Obviously, you got to have goals. You got to have short-term, long-term goals, but you really need a coach or a mentor, or at least a trusted friend that'll hold you accountable and help you reach those goals. I'm a coach for a lot of people. I have a coach, and if she calls me up short when she thinks I'm messing up, and that's what she's supposed to be doing.
I think that's great advice. Well, thanks a lot, Wes. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you, Todd. Enjoyed it a lot, buddy. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you too. Are you constantly thinking about how to keep your enterprise as secure as possible? Get to know Chrome Enterprise, the browser that will secure your organization without the added expense and complexity of additional browsers. Its simplified management features will free up your team to focus on critical security tasks that can be overlooked because of time and attention it takes to manage other solutions. Don't settle for a browser that compromises your organization. Visit securityweekly.com/Chrome now to start protecting your organization like never before.